Okay. I think that this is connecting. Connecting. It's taking a minute to connect. Okay, I think that we are connected now. Very exciting. So, I have not seen the film 2000 Mules. Everybody has been telling me, you have to watch this, you have to watch this. So I finally threw up my hands and said, okay, fine, I'll watch it. I have nothing going on this Monday night. I thought, okay, well, I'll watch it tonight. So Tinley is also here, my dog. She's sitting right here. She looks a little worried. I haven't done a live stream in a long time, and she feels very ignored when I do it, but we just spent like an hour at the park, so she's already gone. She's doing her own thing now. But if you hear noises in the background, it is my dog, Tinley. And I don't know if YouTube will kick me off for playing this. I'm sure they will. I'm sure that there's some sort of an issue with me playing it. I don't know what the issue is yet, if it's copyright. I mean, of course it's copyright, but I did turn off the monetization for this, and I'm claiming that it's not mine. So I think that they could leave it up. I'm not sure, but basically, I just thought, why not do a little live stream with you guys? It's been a long time since I've been on my channel, so this is also a little bit of a hello. And I'm gonna switch the live chat. The live chat should be visible. You never really know if people are gonna participate in the chat or not. So we'll just have to see. I've got the chat in 2 places now. And yeah, I mean, this is probably going to be a really boring video, but if you are also not doing anything tonight and you want to have a watch party with me, let's watch 2000 Mules. I'm not going to watch the whole thing with you, but I am going to do some highlights and some reactions. I want to start off though and watch the trailer. Let's see. 2000 Mules trailer. I want to watch the trailer first. I don't know anything about 2000 Mules. I know from what I've read myself about all of the things that happened in the election, but I have not seen 2000 Mules specifically.
We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive.
Hold on, let me try to get this centered for you. I'm not a professional streamer, if you couldn't tell. Here's the trailer.
Voter fraud organization in the history of American politics. Let me say it again.
The 2020 election was the most secure
Election in American history.
Let me begin by asking a very simple question. Do we know the truth about what really happened in the 2020 election?
I think millions of Americans know something went wrong, and they have little pieces, and no one's really put it together.
I'm agnostic on this question, and I am awaiting more information.
If I believed the president were a Nazi, I might steal an election.
Bold accusations require bold evidence, and they haven't seen it.
We have been working on something big.
Show me the money.
Can we meet? I've been working with Greg Phillips. He has a deep background in election intelligence.
True the Vote has the largest store of election intelligence for the 2020 elections in the world. No one has more data than we do.
So I personally think when all of this started coming out about the election, there was a lot of different issues that were all trying to be addressed at once. And I think it was very hard for people to differentiate, okay, what was an actual issue, what wasn't an actual issue. And I think it was a multifaceted problem. It was multifaceted in the sense that they did a few different things. I don't know what this documentary is going to specifically cover, but I think that what this documentary will specifically cover is people who were hired to bring the fake ballots to the ballot boxes. And what I'm most interested to hear in this documentary, and I think it's in this documentary that they cover it, is the cell phone pings, because I didn't even, I mean, I heard about this documentary, but I didn't even really know about what went into it until I was watching. I like to tap into those live hearings at the state level. So I was in a state level Senate hearing listening to representatives from True the Vote talk about all of these cell phone pings and how they found the cell phone pings, and then the cell phone pings gave them the exact coordinates of a corner. And then they went to that corner, and then they took the surveillance video from a nearby grocery store or a nearby corner, and then they caught the people on camera. So I have so many, when I heard that, I just had so many questions. Like, how did they find these people who were for hire? How did they know that these were the cell phones that they had to monitor? And I have so many questions. That's my biggest one. That's probably my biggest question. How did they know who these people were to monitor their, hi Rocky, to monitor their cell phones in the first place? So Rocky, I was just saying I have a lot of questions about 2000 Mules. Everyone tells me I need to watch it, and I've never watched it. So I'm curious if this is going to answer some of the questions that I have. I think a lot of people have a lot of questions, and I think that what True the Vote is trying to do is answer those questions. But let's see. So that's question number one for me.
Identified in Atlanta 242 mules that went to an average of 24 drop boxes. But Philadelphia alone, we've identified more than 1,100 mules.
What is a mule?
Person picking up ballots and running them to the drop boxes.
This is not grandma out walking her dog. Bad backgrounds, bad reputations. They are interested in one thing, that's money.
And in no shape, in no way, in no time is that legal.
This is organized crime.
Do you have video evidence?
4 million minutes of surveillance video around the country.
Sorry, stop. Did he say 4 million minutes? That's what he said, 4 million minutes?
Do you have video evidence?
4 million minutes of surveillance video around the country.
What you're about to see is disturbing.
Can you do a reaction on one video song? Sure, Rocky, I can do whatever you want me to do. Have you seen those reactions of Charlie Daniels, The Devil Went Down to Georgia? Those are really cool. And it's like these funny rappers who come across Charlie Daniels playing The Devil Went Down to Georgia. If you haven't seen my other YouTube video, I'm actually really into music on my other channel, a video song. I think that's what you mean. Can you do a reaction on one video song? You mean music, Rocky? I think you mean music.
So this is 1 o'clock in the morning.
Don't we all vote at 1 o'clock in the morning?
On one night, this person, this mule, went across 6 counties to 27 different drop boxes.
I call it the Mexican mafia, seriously, because they work like that.
This is jaw-dropping.
What you showed is frightening.
It's just sickening to me.
Now we come to the most important question of all. Was the magnitude of vote trafficking enough to tip the balance in the 2020 presidential?
Okay, the way I feel is that even if it wasn't enough to tip the election, that is hardcore illegal. And like he said, that's organized crime. Like regardless of who wins the election, these people need to be prosecuted. Tinley? She's got her bone and it's a little... Tinley? But regardless, if you have video evidence of these people and cell phone pings, where's their day in court? Because I will be on that court TV live stream every single day watching. They need to go to court.
Election.
It's not a leap to say this would have made a difference.
This looks like
They
real
have
video
ruined
footage.
Election day in the United States of America. That's provable. And that's enough for me
to fight the left with every fiber in my body.
Without free and fair elections, we are not a democracy. We are a criminal cartel masquerading as...
Yeah, I have to say something. You know, I love history and I love reading old newspapers. That's pretty much what my whole music channel is about music history and old newspapers. And I make videos relating to music history on that channel, but I also like reading the political history too. And the Democratic Party is unrecognizable. I cannot recognize them. Who are these people? Like, they are not the Democrats of your grandfather's generation. These people are wackadoodle. They're wackadoodle. And I also just think it was so interesting when all of this was coming out, they kept saying it's a lie, it's a lie, it's a lie. But we hadn't even heard any information yet. So how could you immediately know that it's not true? Like, we were all waiting for information, right? So anyways, I'm just interested in how that's going on.
2,000 Mules.
Okay, so the person who made this documentary has made documentaries before. This is not his first documentary. So he is a skilled, I suppose you could say a skilled what do you call a documentary maker? A documentarist? I don't know. Rocky, you never said what you meant by a video song. Okay, so let's try to make this a little bit bigger. I'm sure that YouTube is going to kick me off, or I'm going to get some kind of a warning or something. I wonder if just saying that triggers it. All right, well, let's go. Let's see.
Every time we vote, we're standing up side by side with the Founding Fathers, with the men of Valley Forge, with patriots and pioneers.
I have to stop this again for a second, because when I went to vote, and I was living in downtown Chicago at that time, I am obviously not there anymore, by the grace of God. But when I went to vote, they did not ask me for a driver's license. And I remember having it ready to go. And I said, oh, don't you need my driver's license? And she was like, no. I was like, oh, okay. I mean, isn't that weird? And in this video, he's showing his driver's license. So I don't know. I thought that was weird. Are there states that still require driver's licenses? Was that just Illinois? Can somebody answer that question for me? I'm curious.
Throughout our history, with all those who dedicated their lives to making this a nation of the people, by the people, and for the people.
Elections are the lifeblood of our democracy. They are the mechanism by which the American people choose who is going to rule on their behalf and for their interests and welfare. Without elections, there would be no way for the American people, for us, to exercise our legitimate sway on the future direction of this country.
Closed in half the country, and we are getting some interesting results coming in from those battleground states.
If you're a Republican, you say, wow. If you're a Democrat, you say, uh-oh.
You see, Donald Trump is now starting to widen his lead. President Trump now with 54% of the vote.
The president right now has the lead in the Keystone State.
We're going to have a great night, and we're going to have, much more importantly, we're going to have a great 4 years.
The 2020 election haunts the American mind.
Here's where it gets really bizarre. Fulton County, most populous county, it is Atlanta. They just stopped counting.
Nevada, meanwhile, has stopped counting votes.
They've all stopped counting for the night?
All right, welcome back. This is CNN's special live coverage, 10:31 a.m. on the East Coast. Why am I giving you the time? Well, if you managed to sleep last night, things changed. You may have gone to bed.
I remember the night of the election, I was staying awake. And I remember going to bed at like probably 11, which is super late for me, thinking, I'll just watch in the morning, whatever it is in the morning. And I could not believe how far ahead Trump was when I went to bed. I really couldn't believe it. And then I didn't know that they stopped counting until weeks later.
Let me begin with one immutable fact. The 2020 election was the most secure election in American history.
It was the cleanest election, the safest election, the most secure election ever run.
Make no mistake, there has been no evidence of any significant widespread voter fraud.
Schumer wouldn't
the 2020
lie
election
to us.
was the most secure
election in American history.
Period.
This same side accuses anyone who disagrees with them of perpetrating a
big lie or the big delusion. The big lie keeps getting repeated.
The big lie is just that, a big lie.
And despite a relentless media barrage, the other side remains convinced there was widespread election fraud.
What I saw was not a secure and transparent election.
Poll watchers claim the Travis County Clerk's Office is locking them out.
Last night there was a major software glitch that actually delayed the counting of all of the ballots.
I look at election fraud, and I want to look at secretaries of state who illegally changed the voter laws without the permission of their state legislature.
There have been numerous attempts to prove election fraud.
The van dropping off ballots in the early morning hours of November 4th, 8 hours past the deadline.
She said her mother was in a nursing home and did not have the mental capacity to vote.
We've obtained video tonight that shows a man dropping several ballots into a drop box.
Scottsdale woman pleads guilty to casting a ballot in her dead mother's name.
Shows a man buying a registration form for an absentee ballot from a voter, giving him, quote, pocket money, unquote, of $200.
Yet courts have refused to consider these cases on the merits.
The Supreme Court rejecting an effort by Republicans to reverse President-elect Joe Biden's win in Pennsylvania.
The Supreme Court has rejected the Texas-led effort to toss out election results in 4 key states.
Even some Republicans dismiss the idea of systematic fraud and call for us to move on.
Fraud did not play a role in the outcome of the election.
The election was fair as we've seen. We simply did not win the election as Republicans for the presidency.
Rather than reject what happened on the 6th, reject the lies about the election, and make clear that a president who engaged in those activities can never be president again.
But we can't move on unless we know the truth. Many other issues arise out of the 2020 election. Did the January 6th protesters go to D.C. to mount an insurrection? It wasn't an insurrection, it was a primal scream.
To protect the Constitution of the United States against enemies foreign and domestic!
They wanted their elected leaders to adjudicate the claims of election fraud. The left's claim that this was the most...
I do think it was a bit of a disservice to everyone that people just immediately said, no, you're crazy, like it was fair. Because I think if they hadn't done that, if they hadn't immediately just been like, it was fair, it was fair, it was fair, without proper due diligence, that's what people wanted. They wanted due diligence. They wanted people to actually look at it. And I think a lot of people felt like they were just being dismissed. I just don't think that it was a service. I don't think that anybody was doing anybody a service by not at least looking into it. So I'm glad that this guy and that True the Vote is actually looking into it to either disprove or prove. Because like he said, either way, it became such a big deal. We need to know.
I started my podcast in early 2021 to speak the truth. But by simply asking questions about election fraud, you get booted from YouTube and Facebook. My podcast is sponsored by Salem Media, and I knew that other Salem hosts felt my frustration. Larry Elder, Dennis Prager,
Oh, the
Eric
tasting room.
Metaxas,
That looked nice.
Sebastian Gorka, Charlie Kirk.
Let me begin by asking a very simple question. Do we feel confident or comfortable that we know the truth about what really happened in the 2020 election?
I'm agnostic on this question, and I am awaiting more information.
What about you, Eric?
I think Dennis is a coward. I think, no, honestly, it's almost funny to me, you say you're agnostic. And I think most Americans know that we don't know what happened and are not okay with that, by the way.
Yeah, I agree with him.
That a man who didn't campaign or campaign from his basement got more votes than the first black president in America? I don't believe it.
Charlie,
Yes. That's a good point.
The picture's far from complete.
He did. He got more votes than
You were
Obama.
asked straight out, right? Do you believe that the 2020 election was stolen? What was your answer, and do you abide by that answer as of right now?
My answer was that Donald Trump is in Mar-a-Lago and Joe Biden is in 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. The lawsuits did not succeed. Do I believe there was shenanigans? Do I believe there were irregularities? Absolutely, and said so. This is probably the most loathed president I've ever seen. I thought Richard Nixon was loathed. I thought George W. Bush was loathed because of the Iraq War. I've never seen the level of vitriol against this man every single day. I think there was a study that found 91% of...
I feel like the media was just so on the attack every single day. And the media never talked about the actual bills that were being passed or actual things that were happening. It was just berating after berating. Just constant, and so repetitive. It was so repetitive.
Asked the Democrats to do virtually anything to make sure he doesn't get another 4 years.
If I believed the president were a Nazi, I might steal an election.
If we were Germans in the 1930s, we'd steal the election from Hitler.
If I'm that indoctrinated, of course I can justify it.
I think it was Jane Fonda who said that COVID was God's gift to the left, right? It wrecks the empirical positives of the Trump economy, but here's the other. It enables a whole bunch of things on the other side to change the...
I do feel like, and I agree with a lot of Democratic policies, but I feel like starting in like the 70s, maybe before the 70s, maybe the 60s, they were always playing off of emotion. And they always want to have a crisis, like something. I had a client like this at my first company where just there always had to be a problem. He literally wasn't happy unless there was a problem that he could be mad about. And that's how it has felt with the Democratic Party ever since probably what I read 50s or 60s, maybe. But I mean, you look back to ancient Rome and you had two political parties. My dog's hair is like going up into my face. But you look back into ancient Rome and ancient Greece, and you had two political parties, even in ancient times, that were going at each other. And one was always the overly dramatic party. You know, there always had to be a problem with them. You know, what's wrong with just being happy? I don't know. But living in downtown Chicago, COVID is a little bit of a trigger for me. And I get a little defensive about it because I saw it literally ruin my life. Like, it literally took the life that I had, and this happened, I think, for everybody across the country. It took whatever life you were living, and it just chewed it up and spit it back out into nothing. So, obviously, we're in a much better place now. We moved. My condo sold. Thank you to my buyer, who I won't go into who the buyer was, but we're out of there. But yeah, my point is, I agree with that Jane Fonda quote that it was like God's gift to them. I agree with that. I think they're also trying to do that with global warming. I think they're also trying to do that with Roe versus Wade, even though Roe versus Wade was completely about giving the power back to the states, which is the whole point of America. And you know, there's so many other countries. If you genuinely don't like that concept of the power being held at the state level, if you genuinely are against that, if you want federal reform, you want federal gun control, you want federal legalization of things, forcing states to perform medical procedures, even if the people who live there aren't for that. If you want that at a federal level, there are tons of countries that offer that, and that offered that before 1776. And no one's stopping these people from going to those countries that honestly, and I'm not saying it to be mean, but honestly, those principles and those values probably align with those people better. And those people probably should move, just honestly to have a better quality of their own life. There's nothing wrong with birds of a feather wanting to flock together. So that's how I feel about that Jane Fonda quote, and about, like he said, making something big out of a crisis.
Rules of the election. So the point is, in a COVID environment, is it not conceivable that Trump could have lost fair and square?
I think millions of Americans know something went wrong, and they have little pieces, and no one's really put it together. They know that there was injustice. They know it in their gut. They know it through the bellwether counties, where Donald Trump won almost every single one of the predictive counties that show who's going to be president. And then they also know it where they went to bed thinking Trump was going to have 4 more years, and they woke up with the exact opposite.
We have an individual who could fill a stadium with 60,000 supporters in 24 hours. Vice an individual, you know the famous photograph of the 6 empty circles at a Biden rally. We have an incumbent president who received more votes than any other incumbent president in American history, who actually got 10 million more votes than he did 4 years prior, and who received more support after 4 years of being called a racist and a white supremacist, more support from the Hispanic and black community than any Republican president since the 1960s. And he was beaten by a machine politician who couldn't speak clearly, who on the campaign stage would confuse his sister with his wife. It just stinks.
Now, is it possible that the very success of Republicans down ballot, I'm talking about Republicans running for the House, running for the Senate, running for other races, the fact that the Republicans as a party did pretty well, but Trump lost, doesn't that work the other way and undercut the idea that there was systematic fraud?
It's an anomaly, because if he really, when a president really loses, he has tails. What is it called?
That's what was so weird about this too, is that if they were, and that's a good point, and I'm glad he's making it, because why didn't we see the trickle down effect? And that makes you wonder, that makes you think, if people were really voting out the policies, then they would have voted out those senators. They would have voted, there would have been a trickle down, there would have been a domino effect. And that was so bizarre and strange. And to me, that's why that was a red flag to me, that there could have been fraud, not the opposite.
Many Republicans are saying, let's move on, is because bold accusations require bold evidence, and they haven't seen it.
And because they know how vulnerable they are and how much they're going to be bashed.
Well, yeah, you're called a sore loser. You're called a conspiracy theorist.
The people who say that, let's move forward, are people in the elite who see Donald Trump as an anomaly.
You will not win in any...
You know, the left is kind of like a toxic ex-boyfriend who you say, is there something going on with you and Monica? And he says, absolutely not. You're absolutely insane. That's so crazy that you would even say that. You're a conspiracy theorist. You're nuts, this and that. And you're like, all I did was ask, like, why were you and Monica kissing in the driveway? Like, I asked, is there something going on? You know, and instead of them saying, well, why would you think there's something going on with me and Monica? And like actually discussing some support, they just immediately call you crazy. I think that's what was really the most alarming thing about all of this. It wasn't even the act itself. It was the aftershocks from the media and from people in Congress saying, just immediately dismissing it. That was like the most alarming thing, more than anything else.
One who has a criminal record and they're fully capable of robbing a bank, but did they rob the bank?
Well, it looks like it.
What does our friend Catherine think about all this?
Catherine's been a little quiet.
Who's Catherine?
I think that means that they're working on something. I think that you should give her a call and see what she thinks.
Who's
Hi, I'm Catherine Engelbrecht, founder and president of True the Vote.
Hey, Dinesh, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing fine. Hey, listen, I'm here with Debbie.
Hey, Catherine.
Hey, Debbie.
I think
You know how
Dinesh is
crazy
so
it out
cute.
there. Have you guys been digging into this whole
I just think he's cute.
issue of voter fraud?
Well, we have been working on...
What if she said no?
It's probably best we don't discuss it over the phone, but can we meet?
What if he said, have you been looking into voter fraud? No, why? Was I supposed to be?
I've been working with Greg Phillips. I don't know if I've ever introduced him to you, but he has a deep background in election intelligence. He's worked projects all over the world. He's a massive 30-year experience. We decided to test a hypothesis, and we went really big. And now we have something that we think you're going to really want to see. So I'll send you the address separately.
Now, Greg Phillips, what's your background that prepares you for this kind of work?
I've been in and around election intelligence and integrity for about 40 years. We've done investigations literally all over the world. It's a combination of data acquisition, data analysis, occasionally some in-depth data mining. Our ability to draw meaningful conclusions that link the who to the when to the where is significant in the space.
Catherine, you started the group called True the Vote in the year 2010. What was your mission or objective?
We just didn't have enough volunteers working at the polls in our local elections. So we began by training people to work in the polls, and then as we got further into it, we recognized, wow, some of the problems you see at the polls can be attributed to problems in the voter rolls. Well, what can we do about the voter rolls? And so it turned into something much bigger.
See, yeah, this felt very, I think this is why we needed to wait until True the Vote had done everything. I mean, it took 2 years, right? And they worked probably every single day for, I'm sure, more than 40-hour weeks. I'm sure. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I'm just guessing. But looking at what they did with all the cell phone pings and tracking down locations, this was a full-time job. And I think another issue with the fraud was that when it was first presented, it was immediately dismissed. And then when they said, okay, let's look into it, they had all of these different people, and it was very just kind of sporadic. It wasn't really focused on here's direct evidence for this. It was just kind of like, here's this video, here's that video, here's this data set, and here's how this data set doesn't correlate. It wasn't pinpointed, and it wasn't presented in a comprehensive way. So I'm hoping that this is what this does.
So Catherine, when you set up True the Vote, you set it up not so much, it's not a partisan organization. Is that because you saw shenanigans, problems with voting as coming out of both parties?
Oh, absolutely. Plus, we need parity of parties at the polls.
Well, you told me about this remarkable election in which you had vote harvesting and vote trafficking, but it was on behalf of a Republican candidate.
Exactly. In North Carolina, it was unique in that it actually overturned an election.
There's going to be a new election in the North Carolina congressional district engulfed in a scandal over voting fraud.
This all centers around allegations that an operative for Harris then hired a team of people to harvest absentee ballots, paying them between $2 and $3 a vote.
So you have an activist, the guy's name was McCrae Dowless, and he worked for the Bladen Improvement Association, which was a kind of an African-American get voters to the polls, but apparently they were doing all kinds of vote harvesting, and he learned the strategy. Then he broke with them, and he took his services to Mark Harris, a Republican, well, actually a pastor who was running.
Correct.
And Harris won. He pulled it off.
In 40 years of doing this, we've seen this over and over again. Sometimes the schemes are a little bit different. Sometimes it's people out banging on doors, gathering ballots. Sometimes the ballots are sent here, gathered here, deposited there. But the trafficking itself is always...
I'm going to skip ahead now to see if we can get to some of the cell phone footage.
They just went overtime.
Documents that would identify a big look at them.
One of the slogans of the Democrats through all this
92,600
the people. Doesn't matter if all.
So she had.
Let's see.
That include the shooting.
At our 200 organizations. Across the country, we bought 10 trillion signals.
When they give you this data that you then have to go through, what does this data look like?
Well, it's a massive data transfer. We have more than a petabyte of data. You're talking about transacting hundreds of terabytes, so it's a significant move of data.
You have 10 trillion signals, that's a lot of signals. So what was the criterion that you set?
Final decision was they had to have been to 10 or more drop boxes, meaning unique visits inside of a space, and 5 or more visits to one or more of these organizations.
Those were the outliers. It was such an aberrant pattern.
So what you're saying, I mean, it seems to me there's no reason for someone to go to even 2 drop boxes, but you're saying that maybe there's a conceivable reason someone...
Okay, this is really interesting too, that they counted 2,000 quote paid mules who are paid to bring these fake ballots. But if you're listening to what they're saying, out of their data set, they had to trim the fat somewhere. They couldn't investigate every single data point. So they could have had somebody with a cell phone going to 2 ballot boxes, which you shouldn't be doing anyway. You should have 1 vote, 1 ballot box trip, you know, that's it. But they had to trim the fat. They had to focus on, you know, only what they could focus on. So even 2,000 is not even, that's probably a conservative number is what I'm hearing. And there's many, many more that they just didn't have the capacity to investigate. So that's interesting. I didn't know that. Learned something there. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit.
Let's identify a large number of big
We should take a closer look.
Let's go to Pennsylvania, critical state. I think it was Pennsylvania that really gave Biden the election.
Philadelphia alone, we've identified more than 1,100
Philadelphia
at rates well beyond anything we'd seen. Closer to 50 drop boxes each.
Each guy going to 50 drop boxes?
Each. 1,100. We saw people...
Okay, hi. 1,100 people going to 50 drop boxes each. Hold, please. I'm opening Excel. $1,100, he said, times 50. That's 55,000 drop boxes. As one person, can you imagine even just running 50 errands in a day, just like going to the cleaners, going to the grocery store? What? That's crazy.
Driving back and forth to New Jersey across the bridge.
But you're saying the ballots may not even be from Philadelphia or from Pennsylvania.
We're saying somebody should investigate.
But you're saying that the origin point appears to be Jersey. Now, running 1,100 mules times 50, we are at 50,000 drop box visits by the mules alone in Philadelphia or greater.
Did I not do that right?
Now, as you were assessing this data, you had, the two of you, and I'm not sure which of you came up with this, a genius idea in my view. It was your... Of course. Of course, who else? Well, to validate your data.
We chose to look at 2 murders that were ebbing on cold case status.
And in Atlanta, 8-year-old Secoria Turner was killed by rounds of gunfire shot into a car. It happened just outside this Wendy's parking lot.
Bought the data and the team got to work.
You could see visually that there were only a handful of unique devices that could possibly have pulled the trigger. So this is the area, and this is where the Wendy's was.
And are you saying that each green dot is the same guy, but moving through time?
Each color is one person. The shooting actually occurred right here in this parking lot, sort of in...
So he's saying these are the cell phone pings. That they put colors on them to make it kind of more user-friendly, but these cell phones would have a really long string of a combination of text, of letters and numbers that would be that cell phone's unique identifier. So this, you know, this yellow would have been XR125. XR125, XR125, this is another, this is another. And this is just an example of what they're doing to figure out how cell phone tracking works. That's what I'm understanding from this, so.
Inside of this circle are really the only potentially legitimate shooters. Each of these devices has a unique device ID. And we turned the bulk of this information over to the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Now, I read, they've arrested 2 suspects.
They have.
2 suspected gang members will appear in court this morning on charges that include the shooting death of 8-year-old Secoria Turner.
And isn't it true that this...
By the way, I'm very worried that, well, maybe I shouldn't go into that. I was going to bring up the border and all of the people coming over. You know, this is a case where they had cell phones and they could track the cell phones and they were somewhat documented. We're going to have a real problem on our hands when it's not like that.
Tracking these movements, this parallels exactly the work you're doing with the mules.
Exactly.
It's one thing to have the scientific
I thought that was a
evidence,
test. Okay, maybe I misunderstood. I thought that was a test that they did to see how cell phone tracking works, but it actually sounds like they've been doing cell phone tracking for a while. That's what it sounds like. I think I misunderstood.
It's persuasive on its own merits, but do you have video evidence?
We do.
How much of it do you have?
4 million minutes of surveillance video around the country.
Official surveillance video of
4 million. Where's my Excel? 4 million minutes. Oh yeah, I did that right. He said 50,000. It's actually 55,000. Was he trying to do math in his head? So what'd they say? 4.6. What'd they say? 4.6 million? Let me back up for a second.
People driving back and forth to New Jersey across the...
Oh no.
He's actually a mule.
Okay, hold on. Let's pretend he said 4.6 million. So let's say 5 million. That's over 80,000 hours. Oh my God. How? Why are these the people? Why are they looking into this? Where's the FBI? Where's the CIA? I mean, why does it, see, and this is why America is we the people, because our founders knew that our government would only go so far. And then citizens have to step up and citizens have to take matters into their own hands. These 2 people have to investigate this because nobody else is. And you know, they had people coming in who worked in finance or who worked in some kind of other data analytical field. Those were the people stepping up to investigate this, not, hi Kate, not the government, not the FBI. This is why it's America, we the people, because these types of people are stepping up and looking into this kind of thing. And not to get on too many tangents here, but looking at gun control, look at that kid who just saved that mall in Indiana from that mass shooting. It just took one good guy with a gun to bring down the bad guy trying to shoot multiple people. It just took one good guy who was there with a gun. And bless his heart, he broke the rules of the mall. The mall says no firearms. I mean, we've all gone into those buildings. There's a big sign that says no firearms. And he broke that rule and he had his conceal and carry. And it's a damn good thing he did. And this is why I believe that, and like I said, I'm not one or the other. I think the Democratic Party has just completely changed. There's a lot of Democratic policies I agree with. There are even certain things that Obama did that I agree with. There are things that Trump did that I agree with. There are things Trump did that I disagreed with. And whether I agree or disagree, I'm very passionate about either one. And one of the things I'm really passionate about is it needs to be we the people. We need to be the ones who can conceal and carry. What we want, what we think is adequate protection, by the way. It is not up to the government, in my opinion, to decide for us what adequate protection is. So it's up to us to do that, and it's up to us to investigate this, so it seems, because nobody else was doing it. So very interesting that these people seem to be professionals in cell phone tracking before this. That was actually something I didn't know. So let's see what their results brought them.
People driving back and forth to New Jersey across the bridge.
Oh, sorry, I think I went a little bit too far.
Each color is one person. The shooting actually...
Sorry, we just watched that.
Video in Georgia?
We do.
Is it video from the presidential election, the runoff election, or both?
Both.
Do you have video from other states?
Some video from Arizona. We have recently learned video was specifically turned off on particular drop boxes.
In which state?
Arizona. Wisconsin, it turns out, even though the rules required them to have video.
Did they do the video?
No, they did not.
There should be video on every Dropbox.
Indeed.
Given today's kind of cost of technology, it would not have been that hard to do it. And you sent me a screenshot, Catherine, where you were requesting video, and I believe it was the state of Georgia saying this video does not exist, and we can't tell you why it doesn't exist.
Right, that was in Fulton County. We have correspondence like that from a lot of states. In the absence of video, and that geospatial data is key to decoding.
So here's a key difference here, I think. You know, you have crimes occur, and then you try to go find the surveillance footage of the crime, and, oh, the surveillance camera doesn't work. I mean, the number of fake surveillance cameras out there, most of the cameras in Chicago that were surveillance cameras were not working, and everybody knew it. And even if they were working, the criminals didn't care. But there are a lot of surveillance cameras out there that just are not hooked up, or they're not connected to the internet, and they're just not working. But the difference here, I think, I'm sorry, Tinley, my dog's on my lap. The difference here, I think, is that by law, they have to record this type of thing. They have to record the room that people are coming into to sign their ballot in person, and they had to have footage on the ballot drop boxes that had to be recorded by law. So that's different than a surveillance camera just not working. It's a different ballgame there.
You know, what the greater scheme was. But in the case of what we're going to show you now, what kicks it up a notch is that we have the geospatial data to support the video.
Let's talk about some of the videos.
The geospatial data is the cell phone
This
tracking.
particular individual we have in a number of different locations at a number of different times. He's actually a mule.
This is the official surveillance video of Georgia.
Absolutely.
And so as the person pulls up, they don't even bother parking. Of course, in the middle of the night, so why would they? He gets out, approaches the box. When people walk up with intention to cheat, they look around, they basically walk fairly quickly, they try to stuff them in, they try to get out of there. In this case, he drops a few on the ground, pick them up, stuff them into the box. Then he hustles back and hustles out of there. So this is what it looks like.
I don't care what the results, I'm sorry. I don't care what the results are. Where's his day in court? I want to see it. Where is it? Where is he right now? Is he at home? Is he at home on his couch right now? This is a big, big deal. This is very, very illegal. Very, very illegal. And why does it take these two people? Why does it take these two people? Sorry if my grammar is not perfect. My dad always makes fun of me, but I always joke that I'm a finance major and I've been a numbers person my whole life. So speech has always been second in my life. And for most of my career, I honestly just crunched numbers. So anyways, but why does it take these two people to get this video, and where's his day in court? I haven't seen it. Have you?
Like, you know, hundreds of ballots being stuffed in.
You don't need a whole lot of fraud, you just need a little in the right places.
I mean, literally the next day, they should have tracked him down and charged
How many
him.
ballots are being tossed into a box at a given time?
It might be 3 or 5 or 6 or 10 or something like that.
The idea is to stay under the...
Okay, so let's say it's 3. Let's say it's 3. So you've got, wait, this was the hours, wasn't it? So we had 55,000 drop boxes, right? Because we had 1,100 mules, and this is just Pennsylvania, 1,100 mules, 50 boxes each. So now, let's say there's 5. Let's say 5 instead of 3. That's 275,000 fraudulent votes. Period. Hard stop. That's a lot. That's a lot. Even if it were three fraudulent votes, the next morning when people were reviewing the surveillance footage of the drop box overnight, the next morning, even if it was only 3 in one location, he still should have been charged and should have gone to court. That still should have happened because that is very, 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 very illegal. Of course it didn't, but it should have.
Radar. And as Greg said, the number is, 3, 5, 10 ballots, but then they're not done for the day either. They're going place to place to place, day upon day upon day. And so that will not show up in your chain of custody documents, your tracking documents that would identify a big blip.
I mean, they're not going up and dumping in, buckets full of ballots. On the other hand, we've seen circumstances where it appears that buckets full of ballots showed up. There's one box in Gwinnett County that had a chain of custody document with 1,962 ballots noted on this. And first of all, that's roughly 10 times what we normally see. We sorted through the geodata, found a few hundred people. Okay, well, that's pretty odd. We have video of all of this. And guess what it shows? 271 people approached that ballot drop box during that 25-hour period. 271. 1,962 ballots were deposited.
Wow.
Here are election officials pulling out of that drop box 2 full duffel bags containing over 1,900 ballots.
And no one looked at, no one thought, nobody thought that's a lot. Maybe we should look at the video footage. No one had that feeling. I don't know.
The thing about this person is the device seems to live in South Carolina. So this person isn't even from Georgia. She was here during both election cycles, but is not a resident of the state.
But as she approaches the drop box, she never looks at the trash can, right?
She's looking the other way.
But the other thing she has is she has gloves on. What one of our analysts noticed was these surgical gloves only appeared from December 23rd forward in the runoff. So we didn't see a lot of them previous to December 23rd, and we couldn't figure out why. And then it just dawned on us, well, on December 22nd, there was an indictment handed down in Arizona for people that had stuffed ballots, and the way the FBI nailed them was fingerprints. And then lo and behold, the next day and days forward.
Who is keeping track of that and then sending out that memo to all of the mules? Someone is, because these people are not all realizing this together. There's a chief somewhere, and these are their Indians. Who's the chief? I mean, these people need to be investigated. They need to be brought to court. And when they are, they need to track the money. And how were they paid? And who was paying them? They need to seize all of their electronic devices, read their text messages. I mean, this needs to be at the same level as January 6th. They need to be investigating these people. Why are these people not being investigated? I'm floored. I'm just floored. And again, this is why we the people, right? But again, we can only go so far too. We can't just take somebody's cell phone and go into that whole, they know, but the media only told you it's conspiracy. And we can't take their cell phones. As you know, thankfully, these two people who have a background in cell phone tracking, they're doing all of this. They're the ones doing it. And that's why we are America, we the people. We are the people who step up and do things like this. But we can't take their cell phones and track their Venmo accounts or get into their bank accounts. They need to go to court. They need to be investigated. And all of that needs to happen. all of the, electronic device monitoring the payments, because somebody ordered them to do this. Somebody paid for it. Who paid for her ticket? They said that she lives in South Carolina and this was in Pennsylvania. Who paid for her transportation to get there? Was she reimbursed for that? I'm sure she was. If they're being paid, $3 an hour or something, well, I don't know how much they're being paid. But if they're being paid, let's say they're being paid $15 an hour, that's still, you're not making that much of a profit when you account for the plane ticket and the car. And these people are not residents of Pennsylvania or Georgia. Are we in Georgia now? We might be in Georgia. They're not residents of that state. They're residents of a different state. So who is paying for them to get there? So many questions. I wish that had been answered already, but it hasn't, which is fine. This is still very interesting. But we still need to know who's paying for all of this, who paid for them to get there. And regardless, maybe we don't skip ahead. Maybe we actually take a step back and, again, charge these people in these videos and take them to court. And that's where we'll get this information. Let's subpoena people.
So this video is now from the Georgia runoffs. This is January of 21.
This particular one is approximately one.
Oh, but meanwhile, Meanwhile, we're putting all of our energy into January 6th. We have a whole committee for January 6th. These people have been behind bars in solitary confinement. The people who literally were walking in and taking pictures of the Capitol. They were taking pictures in awe. They were excited to look, we're at the Capitol. I mean, like this. And where is she? Where is she tonight? Is she eating KFC in her kitchen? Is she watching Breaking Bad on her couch tonight? Where is she? Where's that other guy tonight? Living their best life? I don't know. Seems really wrong to me. And really one-sided.
On January the 5th.
Stuffs her ballots in there. It's like a small stackish, maybe 3, maybe 4. Takes them off. And then puts them in a trash can that she never looked at.
Okay, and this is pretty damning to me. I've never seen 2,000 Mules. This is my live reaction to it. But it's pretty damning that if she was concerned about COVID, if she was wearing those gloves because she was concerned about COVID, she would not have taken them off right there. She would have kept them as she took off her mask first and then her gloves. I mean, or as she's going to the car she would have kept the gloves on. It doesn't make sense why she's throwing them off here right after this. That doesn't make sense to me. Or maybe it does make sense and I'm not thinking that way. That's pretty damning to me looking at it.
So
the gloves were for a ballot purpose.
Right. And so we have her on a number of locations.
She's an out-of-state mule, and then this is in no way the only.
Who paid for her to get there?
independent.
Who paid for her transportation?
No, she goes to dozens and dozens over the course of these 2 elections.
Who's next?
What you're going to see is he approaches the drop-off.
And it's not like we can't identify them, because I know that they have their face masks on, and I know that they have gloves on. And you're probably like, oh, well, Christy, how are they going to, my name's Christy, by the way, yuppie. But how are they going to identify them? Well, they have the unique identifier for their cell phone. They have that. So they know where they live. They know they're not residents of the state that they're doing this in. They know their first name. They know their last name. They know their address. Why haven't I seen them in court yet? It's been 2 years.
Bike. He also has a backpack on. Pulled the ballots out of his backpack.
Taking his time,
digging around, looking for some ballots.
And like I said, the next day, it should have been the next morning. I don't care if it's 4 ballots. I don't care if it's 10. The next morning, first of all, by law, they have to record these ballot boxes. The cameras have to be working, and they weren't. Second of all, the very next day, it should be somebody's job to watch the surveillance footage. And anybody like this, anybody, immediately you pull all of the cell phone information from all of the cell phone towers. You get all of the pings. You put it together, and you get this guy, And you charge him the next morning. I don't care how many ballots. This is so illegal.
And he'll put them in.
Who's that guy walking around?
But you also see him get sort of frustrated as he starts to leave, because guess what? At this point, they had started requiring the Mules, apparently, to take pictures of the stuffing of the ballots. It appears that that's how they get paid. So they take a picture and stuff it in. They take a picture, not a selfie, but a picture of the actual ballot going in. But this guy gets frustrated, so he actually has to park his bike, get off.
So if you were there just casting your own ballot, what reason in the world would you have to come back and take a picture of the box?
And he kneels down.
Looking around.
Take some pictures.
Okay, the next one.
Yeah, so let me show you Dog Guy. So Dog Guy, middle of the day, this is actually at a polling place. So the people in line are waiting to go in and vote early. They're doing it the right way. Okay, now you've got some other people gonna walk up. This lady doesn't care, but this next guy cares. He's watching the whole thing. The guy looks up, talks to him.
Got the ballots under his arm already. Now he's got the rest that he pulled out of the bag.
And he's gonna get his camera ready to take the pictures as he puts them in there. If you consider the brazenness of this, right? This is the middle of the day. There's people sitting there watching you cheat. People that are doing it the right way.
But it's difficult for them to know what to do, except observe and maybe say, what's going on here? What did I just see?
They wonder, what does this all even mean if this is happening in broad daylight and nobody's doing anything to stop it?
And so these are the kind of things, 4 million minutes of this. This was an organized effort to subvert a free and fair election. This is organized crime. You can't look at this data in its aggregate and believe anything otherwise. That's especially true when you consider that in places like Georgia, it was only decided by 10,000, 12,000 votes. And you look at 5,000 visits just from our Mules, it's not a leap to say, yes, this would have made a difference.
Adding these numbers up, we have 2,000 plus Mules based upon not searching these whole states. And remember, we're only talking about a small number of states. We're not talking about
Unbelievable. I mean, I knew that this was happening, but what I didn't know, and what's the most frustrating thing, is that they had the cell phone pings and they have the video footage. Why haven't they been charged? That's what is so beyond frustrating. I mean, it's one thing to say, look at the numbers, they don't make sense. Because I did that, and I watched that whole, I think his name was Bobby, and he was a data analyst, and he works in a similar capacity that I worked for years. So I watched everything he did, and I looked at all of his reports, and I mirrored them myself in my own Excel workbooks. And I could see the irregularities in the data, but what the data didn't show, it showed that something didn't make sense, but it didn't show you how or why it did. Like, it didn't show you this. It didn't show you the cell phone pings. It didn't show you the surveillance footage. It's one thing after the fact to pull the data and say something didn't go right. But what's infuriating after watching this is that they straight up had surveillance footage, and it is the duty and the job of the people working these poll places to review the surveillance footage literally the next day or whenever you can. Review it. Whenever, the very first moment, review it. And when you do, charge these people. It's not hard. Get the cell phone tower information. Get the unique identifier for their cell phone. You charge them the next day. The next day. We should not, this is what's making me mad. We should not be here 2 years later. They shouldn't be doing the job for them. They should already have had their day in court. That's what's infuriating to me. And I feel like that is probably the purpose of this whole documentary is, okay, we know that the data didn't make sense. We know that there were data irregularities, but here's what people saw and had record of and did nothing with. Ta-da! These people are creepy too. And yet, I have to say also, the fact that they are taking pictures of the ballots and they're all doing the exact same thing, right? They all have the gloves on. They're all putting in numerous ballots. They're taking the photo, then they're taking off the gloves. That indicates procedure and intent to me. Procedure and intent. They know, so, and that also, like he said, signifies organization, because an organized crime effort. And yes, and someone is paying for this for sure. That's how they're getting paid for sure. Because if this were just a bunch of people really mad at Trump, this is my brain thinking. If these were just a bunch of people really mad about President Trump's tweets, maybe. If these were just random people, they would not have the same procedure of taking the picture and taking off the gloves. That's all. They would not have the same procedure. They would just be coming up, in a fit of rage, throwing in a bunch of, meaningless ballots. F you, Donald Trump. I'm going to put in 6 or 7 of these. Ha! I've done my American duty today. No. They're taking pictures. They're taking off gloves. They all start wearing gloves on the same day, December 23rd. So a memo went out, obviously. That's creepy.
But it's not the same as ballot.
10 drop boxes. The people who
averaging 50 drop box visits and 5 illegal ballots per drop. That's 125,000 illegally trafficked votes, not quite the 154,000 vote difference between Trump and Biden. So Michigan, with its 16 electoral votes, stays in the Biden column. In Wisconsin, 100 Mules, averaging 28 drop box visits and 5 illegal ballots per drop. That's 14,000 illegally trafficked votes. 6,000 votes short to give Trump the win. So using only our Mules, Wisconsin's 10 electoral votes stays in the Biden camp. But now we come to Georgia. 250 Mules, averaging 24 drop box visits and 5 illegal ballots per drop. That's 30,000 illegally trafficked votes, far more than the 12,000 vote difference between Trump and Biden. So Georgia, with 16 electoral votes, moves over into the Trump column. In Arizona, the numbers are roughly the same. 200 Mules, averaging 20 drop box visits and 5 illegal ballots per drop. That's 20,000 illegal votes. Again, these illegal votes are substantially more than the 10,000 vote margin that gave the state's 11 electoral votes to Biden. In Philadelphia, Pennsylvania alone, 1,100 Mules, averaging 50 drop box visits and 5 ballots per visit. That's 275,000 illegal votes, again comfortably exceeding the 80,000 vote margin between Trump and Biden. So Pennsylvania's 20 electoral votes goes for Trump.
Literally sick to my stomach.
This narrow way of looking at just our 2,000 Mules.
Who's behind this? There is an organization behind this.
Trump the win with 279 electoral votes to Biden's 259. But no one thinks that our 2,000 Mules were the only mules trafficking illegal votes. To widen the search, Greg and his team lowered the criterion from 10 or more to 5 or more drop boxes. This revealed a huge upsurge in the number of mules from 2,000 to 54,000. 54,000 mules. Next, they used a very conservative estimate of just 3 ballots per drop box visit. Now, when we multiply this increase,
that's very conservative, because even just looking at the video footage that we just saw, they've got way more than 3. They've got like 10 for sure. They're dropping them. They're literally stuffing them and dropping them. 3 per incident is so wildly conservative. Like, let's just multiply whatever this N number is. We have to multiply it by 10. Am I wrong?
The 5 Dropbox visits per mule times just 3 illegal votes per drop.
3 illegal votes per drop is so... Okay, so 810,000. We know that it was more than 3 on average. No, we saw at least 10. So actually, is this that wrong? Do you think that that's that wrong? Because I saw at least 10 in every video. I think it's more like 8 million illegal votes. I do. Yes, Tinley. I know. My dog's getting all riled up. I think it's more like 8 million. Good girl. Good girl. Yeah, we're mad. We're pretty pissed off, both of us.
Scale. In Wisconsin, 83,565 illegal votes were trafficked. In Georgia, 92,670. In Pennsylvania, 209,505. In Michigan, 226,590. And in Arizona, 207,435.
I'm at least doubling it in my mind.
Using this calculus,
based on the video we
won
saw.
all the key states. And the final electoral vote, 305 to 233.
So I think, pause for a second. This was the final electoral vote. It's like crazy how many more people. So they thought, okay, we need, in one state, we need 200,000 votes. And that should do it. That should do it. But in fact, it was so overwhelming. They almost didn't get away with it. It almost didn't work. All of this. Like, what? The turnout then? And I guess you do see it. I mean, he will announce that he's having a rally, and within 24 hours, there's over 60,000 people there, which is absurd. That's crazy. And if you have a state where it was a $10,000 vote difference, that's not a lot. That's not a lot.
No one thinks that our 2,000 mules were the only mules trafficking illegal votes. To widen the search, Greg and his team lowered the criterion from 10 or more to 5 or more drop boxes. This revealed a huge upsurge in the number of mules from 2,000 to 54,000. 54,000 mules. Next,
it's just crazy. It's just crazy.
Going to interview that mule, and we got the video.
Is this Project Veritas's?
I guess they're concealing.
No, they have something too that's pretty interesting.
So what was your job? Like, what were you doing?
Receptionist.
So at some point, you were asked or sort of instructed, I guess, to start receiving people's ballots.
I was just instructed to go ahead and receive ballots from various people, females mostly, and on Friday they would come and pick up payment. I assumed it was payments for what they were doing.
So they would, during the week, they would bring them in at various times, and then you would pay them like all on a Friday. Is that kind of how it went?
Yes.
Interesting.
And then I would get a call to find out how many ballots were brought in and if they were already pre-filled out first. And she would come to the office, look at them, and then before she left, she would either take them herself, but other times she would...
So interviews like this, I'm going to kind of skip over it. I mean, it's disturbing, but I like to just look at the numbers. I like to look at what we know, like what is a concrete evidence and concrete proof. And interviews like this, although I'm disturbed by it, it's not an actual number to me. And like I said, I'm a numbers person. I've always worked with numbers. That's why my grammar is so bad. But I like to look at the numbers and the actual evidence. So that's what I appreciate, and that's what I'm taking from this documentary. The video surveillance footage and the cell phone pings with the unique cell phone identifiers. That's really the biggest thing. I mean, more than the surveillance footage is secondary to the cell phone pings. That is an enormous piece of evidence that you cannot dispute. And when you take that and you go to the same location and then you find the video surveillance of this happening, again, why are they not already behind bars? Why is everyone from January 6th behind bars? And why is there a committee that's all I hear about on the news? That's all they're covering is January 6th. I'm working and I'm getting a pop-up alert that I need to tune in to the January 6th hearing. Where's the hearing on this? This is literally the backbone, the foundation of our country. I don't know. So I'm going to skip over this interview because who knows who she is. This is another person talking. Maybe she's saying something interesting. I'll back up.
Voted in February 2021?
Absolutely. But I was
Who's that?
to hear that she voted in the last presidential election.
Much to my surprise, she had voted for the last...
Oh, dead people have been voting forever.
And those drop boxes are, most people would think, funded entirely by the states. In other words, the drop boxes in Georgia are funded by the state of Georgia. But that's not entirely the case, is it?
In the 2020 election, there was an unprecedented hundreds of millions of private dollars going into government election offices. The 470 million or so
is that legal? I don't know.
Sent by Mark Zuckerberg and his wife.
We did our part to secure the integrity of the election.
There were a few other places
Thanks,
that put
Mark.
in much smaller amounts. One entity that put in $25 million was, again, a nonprofit that's part of the Arabella Advisors, which as a total empire in 2020 took in $1.7 billion.
Is there any evidence that this operation...
It must be legal because everybody's doing it. It must be legal. So I guess that's a good starting point of tracking the money, right? Maybe not, because they probably broke it up into pieces and it probably is actually kind of difficult.
Had a partisan thrust or a partisan character.
As we all know, big money rarely comes without strings attached. One of the big ones is lots and lots of drop boxes. Also, lots and lots of vote by mail. To get your nice big checks, you had to do things like have drop.
I don't think we should get rid of vote by mail. I know a lot of people are saying, get rid of vote by mail, just get rid of it. But there are reasons for vote by mail that I don't think should be ignored. I think if you're going to do vote by mail, you have to prove a disability. You have to prove that you are immobile in some way. You just have to prove that ahead of time, and then it has to be vetted because this is so loosey-goosey. But I don't think we should get rid of it completely. But why not paper ballots? I mean, because this documentary so far has only focused on mules, which I think is fantastic because we were getting a lot of information from a lot of different places, and we need more documentaries that are just pinpointed. Like I said, I think this was a multifaceted operation. This is one piece of the operation. These mules going to the drop boxes and physically dropping them in. But I want to know more about the electronic side of the actual voting polls. I would like there to be another documentary on that. I don't know if there is one. I would like to see that next. But we don't even need to because this is so damning. But I take that back. We do need to. And I'd like to see it. But I'm glad that this focused only on one piece because like I said, we were getting so much information and it was so sporadic that it was so easy to create this narrative of these people are crazy, they're conspiracy theorists, they are off of their rockers. It was so easy to, listen to that narrative and believe it because there was no real support And then they were just throwing out all of these different things. Oh, it's the drop boxes. Oh, it's the servers. Oh, it's oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the company who served the electronic poll boxes. I'm blanking on it. It's almost my bedtime. It's 8 o'clock. But it was just so much information and so misguided. So I'm glad they're only focusing on one thing. But again, I would like to see that too.
Boxes, encourage vote by mail, have ads in foreign languages, all kinds of things that little by little are nudging the turnout for one particular political party. In addition to the $470 or so million that went into the Zuckbuck operation, you also had in 2020 a $120 million project, very secretive, called the Voter Registration Project. The $120 million, it came from Soros's foundation, it came from Visa's foundation, it came from Warren Buffett's foundation, it came from unions like the SEIU. The Voter Registration Project has as its goal increasing in the 8 target states over 2 million voters who are overwhelmingly expected to vote for the Democratic Party.
And so the states that we're talking about here, Arizona?
Yes.
Georgia?
Yes.
North Carolina?
Yes.
Any others?
Nevada, New Mexico.
Here we've got an operation of illegal vote trafficking. You've got thousands of mules. They're being paid to do this. What you're saying is there is more than enough money available to fund any such operation. In fact, this would be only one part of a much larger effort to control the election.
We are talking $500 million in nonprofit charitable funds flowing into efforts to register and get out the vote for Democrats. Most of the left-wing mainstream media, when they reported on the Zuckbucks going through, they made it sound like, oh, it's all going to go for masks and, plexiglass and all. And every study that's ever been done of some of the grants to the big cities found a few percent maybe going to help people that way, and the massive amounts of money going into ginning up the vote by mail operation and the drop box operation and those sorts of things that benefit one political party.
Yeah, those were the salaries of the people doing that.
That this will be a fair election.
They're sending millions of ballots all over the country. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen.
Trump predicted. He said the Democrats are going to cheat, that they're going to use the pretext of COVID, they're going to rig the rules in their favor. Nevertheless, Republicans focus their efforts on the campaign, while Democrats focus their efforts on the process of actually running the election.
The two sides don't approach elections in the same way. The Democrats, they understand that the rules, the process by which elections are conducted is just critical.
We must now face the chilling reality. The Democrats conceived the heist. They funded it. They organized it. Then they carried it out. They rigged and stole the 2020 presidential election. We cannot be okay with this. We cannot simply move on.
Guys, I'd like to have your honest assessment on what you've seen, what you've heard, and what we can reasonably draw from it.
What do we have empirically? We have data, geolocated, we have footage of people harvesting ballots. Do we know who those ballots were for? We can't know who they were for. However, you have to inject common sense. Are we saying that in the centers of Democrat-held districts, we are seeing hundreds and hundreds of visits to drop boxes with pro-Trump ballots? It beggars belief.
It's ballot laundering. Looks pretty convincing to me. I don't think we'll ever know the full story.
It is ballot laundering.
And what makes this crime so compelling and unique is that once the ballot enters the system, it's really hard to reverse engineer it. But when you have the cell phone geolocation data and then the actual footage of them doing what you would expect them to be doing, taking pictures of the ballots, taking gloves off, visiting multiple times, I mean, it seems pretty clear to me, and it explains the sudden spike.
But where are these people? Where are they right now? What are they doing right now? Because there are people right now behind bars in jail for literally taking pictures of the Capitol on January 6th. They didn't break anything. They didn't take anything. They didn't assault anyone. They were literally let in and were impressed by the venue and were taking pictures. And they, right now, as I'm making this live stream, are behind bars already. They have been. So why? Where's that girl that we saw? Where is she tonight? Where is he tonight? Is he eating Chinese food? Is he at Dave & Buster's? Is he at Applebee's? What is he doing right now? And think about what he's doing right now, and then think about what some other people are behind bars for right now. And we have a whole committee right now in Washington. All they're talking about is January 6th, which, don't get me wrong, we should be talking about that. And that should be investigated 100%. But what the hell? We're not going to investigate this too? It's very, very, very wrong. Okay, well, my final thoughts on, I'm glad I watched it. It didn't give me too much information that I didn't already know, but what I didn't know was this surveillance footage was here, and that it directly correlated to the cell phone pings and to the unique cell phone identifiers. That's something I didn't know. And that, I think, is what's infuriating me after watching this, because I already knew that the data didn't make sense. I already knew that this had been happening because we saw the suitcase video and other videos, but it was all circumstantial. This is not circumstantial. This is geo-tracking technology directly correlating to surveillance footage. Also directly correlating to the specific counties that had these enormous spikes after 1 o'clock in the morning. So this is not circumstantial anymore. That's what's infuriating. So, okay, let me know in the comments how you think we should proceed with this information. Thanks for spending Monday night with me. I don't do live streams that often, but I'm sure I'll do another one on another night where there's absolutely nothing going on and we can have another little watch party.